JT Alexander, we have two questions here from JT Alexander and then from Glad that focus on the Lakers and Russ. So I'll loop them together. JT Alexander asks, what do the Lakers do to be competitive? Do they take the hit on their first round picks to get Russ off and get a couple decent role players, or is there just no hope for the current iteration of this team? I'll answer this one first because I do think Glad's is a little different. At this point, I wrote that I would have just moved him. And I think that the default is you just move him. Like, what is the best offer you could get return for those two first round picks right now? Or is there a way to get one of those deals while only giving up one guaranteed first? Like, is it one first and a swap, a 27 first, and then the 2028 swap? Or you can even do a 26 swap as well. And I would just do it because LeBron's in his age 38 season. And you're just, even if you're not a contender, you are obligated to treat yourself like one. That being said, I don't think moving Russell Westbrook solves the Lakers' issues. They're not going to get enough quality talent back. If they're waiting this out and for some reason Kyrie Irving becomes available again in Brooklyn, they're able to pull off that deal. I mean, maybe. But you do that. I don't know if it makes them contenders. They're still really shallow there. Barring something like that, though, the fact that you didn't do anything to address this over the offseason after knowing it didn't work going through last year, after you should have already known it didn't work before you even made the initial trade, there might just be a take your play-in or worse exit medicine at this point. Why double down and mortgage your future for a team that doesn't even have an immediate future? I mean, Anthony Davis is battling back stuff and looks at Russell Westbrook's dealing with hamstring stuff now. He doesn't play against the Nuggets. The Lakers don't look that much better without him anyway. And so I'm like, it's not to say that you should ride it out with this group. If there is a trade that comes along where it costs you one first round pick in 2027, or it doesn't cost you a first round pick because maybe there's a team that just so values getting off longer term money and you don't care about your cap space as long as you get to keep your first round picks, then yeah, do that trade. At this point, I wouldn't give up first. Like if it's one for knowing the rumored deals that are out there. So I'm basing this or could be out there. If it costs you one and a swap, yeah, maybe I'm reevaluating the Buddy Hield, Miles Turner situation. Maybe I'm reevaluating what the Spurs would be doing if it's a Josh Richardson and then, Jakob Poeltl. I think that's probably for them to get only one first round pick for Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson while taking on Russ is fairly light as well. But if you can do something like that, then do it. Otherwise, I don't see the pathway to this year's Lakers being more than a first round exit, almost by way of the play-in. I just don't even see a path to them getting into the top six this year. And so reset over the summer, have your first round picks. Russ comes off the books. You will have cap space. Yeah, LeBron's going into his age 39 season, but he's still pretty damn good. Maybe you just, cross your fingers and hope for the best there. And then also hope that either, I guess you have a first round pick this year, but you just hope that the Pelicans are worse than expected so that even when they exercise their swap, you're still getting a lotto pick or something. But the Pelicans aren't going to be worse than expected. That's been pretty clear. Glad on this same subject as with all the Russell Westbrook trade scenarios being brought up, is there a team he gets traded to where he actually ends up playing minutes for the rest of the year? For the most part, the only reason teams are trading with the Lakers is to get their picks and move off big contracts, gain Westbrook's expiring. None for Westbrook as a player. The popular trade ideas with Indiana and San Antonio both have young backcourts and players they want to give minutes to, and I presume would waive or send him home. Maybe Miami would play him, but I really don't see that happening. Charlotte, if they send Rozier and Hayward, since they would be tanking if they decide to do that. But also, if a tanking team decides to trade for him and play him, would he actually end up playing well enough that for the team to win a few extra games that they shouldn't? I don't think teams are going to risk it, especially at the end of the year. For the most part, it seems that wherever he goes, we won't be seeing him playing till next season, if that. So I would disagree with the latter. I think he would get, if a team is going to, well, I shouldn't say that. If in all likelihood they'll broker a buyout or they'll waive him if it's late enough into the year post trade deadline. Like if it's at the trade deadline, then yeah, like you could just, you're not getting off that money anyway. If it's before, maybe you get into the game of, well, we're holding on to his contract to see if we can move it, so he's not going to play for us. But I would guess that he hits the waiver wire and then signs with a team that I don't know if that gives him a big role, but that's just desperate for point guard help. In terms of a team that I could see trading for him and actually using him, it would be Charlotte for me, just for the Jordan Brand connection. And if you're giving up Rozier and Hayward, when's LaMelo coming back from that sprained ankle? And you're still, I know Dennis Smith Jr. is kind of balling out, but does Russ put bodies in seats? Like how much does Michael Jordan care about that? And are they not doing it to tank or further their tank so much as we want the longer term money of Hayward and Rozier off our books. I don't think Rozier, when you look at the new cap climate, that's just not a big deal. But if you're getting Lakers picks, and then it's also, well, we haven't really damaged our chase for the 10 seed all that much, and we can play Russ. We can surround him with, well, not a bunch of shooting, but 3 shooters on the court, even without Rozier and Hayward. Although I guess not if Oubre's there. You do have Cody Martin still. But just because the Jordan Brand connection, the other one I did see is Utah, just because depending on who they're moving out in that deal, like if they're giving up Conley and Clarkson, do they want a veteran to steer things? You don't want to play with Colin Sexton, but if it's Danny Ainge and it's before the trade deadline, this would be my point. Maybe Russ doesn't report to the Jazz. That's always on the table. But if you're Danny Ainge and it's before the trade deadline, you're not in the business of, well, I'm going to give up this expiring contract now. I'm going to see if anything materialized leading into the trade deadline. And if, as long as Russ is not, submarining the mood, the vibe of your team, you can play him and not damage your rebuild, in the sense that Utah specifically, you're not dealing with guys who need to get these touches. Like if he's eating in to Sexton and Lauri Markkanen's usage, I would argue those two guys probably aren't going to be on the Jazz in 2 to 3 years. That would just be my guess, but maybe I'm wrong. Lauri Markkanen looks good enough to headline a dynasty right now, but you can stagger minutes, play Russ in a bit role. And maybe the idea is, if we show that he can play, especially within Utah's offense, the way they're able to spread the floor with a bunch of people, with a bunch of the players that are there right now, do you just play him and see if another trade materializes? If it's after the deadline, no, absolutely not. He's not reporting to Utah. He's not reporting to Indiana. So in all likelihood, whichever team he gets traded to is doing so with the intention of just recooing assets and then just getting him, paying him to essentially stay home or go away. And then at that point, though, as long as, I do expect Russ, if he's traded, to play again this season. So I will say that. Maybe it just takes longer because it happens before the trade deadline, and then he doesn't want to waive him or broker a buyout. They want to see if there's other moves to be made. Using Indy, but it could hold true for the Spurs as well. Would the Spurs even play him? Probably not, just because you want Devin Vassell, Kellen Johnson, Josh Primo to get those on-ball reps. But maybe just because they're so barren of an proven offensive organizer right now. And would Russ want to play for Pop? And would Pop, you could see Russ giving Pop a headache, but would Pop sort of just like the challenge and appreciate having sort of the older head there, especially if, 2 or 3 of the players going out in any Westbrook deal or Pirtle, Richardson, and Doug McDermott, you're just bankrupting yourself of veterans who are not named Gorgie Jang at this point. So yeah, that would just be my stance there. There aren't teams that are going to acquire him with the intention of playing him, but I could see a scenario in which he gets traded to a team that actually winds up playing him. But I do expect him to play again this season if and when the Lakers do move him.